Okay, so let's get started. So our topic today is managing multiple accreditations, which is going to interest a lot of people here. Let me get my next slide. So I'm Mélanie Cadart. I'm the senior manager for HEADway Quality and Accreditation, which is the quality and accreditation department of HEADway Advisory. And Björn, maybe you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, thank you. Just a small correction there. It's Jönköping International Business School. So,
Oh,
uh,
sorry.
yeah, that's all right. Great to be here. I work as the director of quality accreditation and rankings. That's correct. And so, part of my daily life is to work with quality assurance management, Equus, ACSB, and probably in a half a year, Amber, and some rankings also. So good to see you. Well, I don't see you actually. I see some of you, but
We'll see. I'll make a note on that afterwards. Uh, as usual, be careful because when you log in, you have your mic on. So if you can turn your mic off. So a quick presentation of our firm. HEADway Advisory is a consulting firm that specializes in higher education and research with several activities. So the main one is strategy. Then we have people for headhunting services, and then quality accreditation. That's me and my team. And then we have information and data. So I will stop sharing my screen and get back to the live feed. Okay, so as usual, you're more than welcome to turn on your camera so that it feels like we're having a conversation with friends rather than make a lecture. And just make sure that your mic is off. That's all. So, subject managing multiple accreditations. So, I had done a survey a couple of months ago, which I still haven't exploited the results of, to see how many accreditation schools usually deal with, and most of them have more than five, and up to, I don't know. I don't think there was a limit, but a lot of them also deal with sometimes as many as 10 or 15 accreditations. So how do you manage that many accreditations, uh, avoid burnout? Because we know how hard it can be. Mostly you end up with deadlines that are the same on many different subjects. So Björn, I don't know how many accreditations you have to deal with at your school. Do you have also national accreditations?
yes, and I welcome you all to Sweden because we only have institutional accreditations. That's and that's the same for all Nordic countries. So whereas you have on a program level, on the other hand, how the system works is that they visit us every 6 years. However, during that period, we need to internally audit all programs in a cycle. So we have to go through all programs at the university at least once, sometimes maybe twice. So in a way, it's like a program accreditation, but it's done internally. The good thing is that the Swedish Higher Education Authority recognizes ACSB as a very good replacement for the internal audit. So we exempted
That's
from that
nice.
process. Yes. It's sort of similar, I think, in the Netherlands, but obviously not in France. It would be good, right, if they said, look, it's fine with ACSB, but that's not likely to happen. Yeah, exactly.
There are some discussions, but so far nothing's working, and you cannot replace even a small part of your national accreditations. Alain says it costs money. Yeah, no, it would. Yeah. Well, we don't pay for CFDG, so I don't know. Sorry, Björn.
and of course that would make a lot of civil servants unemployed, so it's not going to happen, right? So I guess it's something that we have to live with. But of course, even if we don't have as many national accreditations as you have per program, still, you have to live with the internal quality assurance system on a program level continuously. I'm quite sure that you also write annual program reports, quality improvement plans on a program level, a school level, university level, owner level. So we basically live in a continuous assessment. And I think, for example, ACSB started to recognize this. So a hot topic in their international conference in Georgia, Atlanta, next week is to how do you balance and live with multiple accreditations. And I think particularly relating to assurance of learning, that maybe a lot of you struggle with also with ACSB, that they recognize this and encourage you to use whatever you have working locally or what is expected from you regionally or nationally to piggyback on that and not create something separate. So I think ACSB start to recognize this more. Equus, probably not, because they don't put as much effort on or emphasis on establishing learning systems, since they work more on a sample based. But I think when I started out 2010, ACSB basically expected to create a separate system or entity or creature only looking at AOL. Now the move is towards more integrate what you have. I think that's what they send out. I mean, the initial accreditation committee is still very picky about AOL, so they enforce AOL to a much greater extent than before, and can get really grumpy if you don't have a system up and running that, let's say, leads to continuous improvement, evidenced continuous improvement, ideally in some kind of report, right, or something that you can put in a table.
Yes, and there are a lot of French schools here, and in France we have this thing called competency orientation, where we're supposed to develop our curriculum based on large competencies, which would be your competency goals really in AOL. So now it gets a little easier to actually match what we're doing in French schools with AOL. It used to be completely different, and I think now it's easier to do this.
Which saves the only time. Challenge there, the challenge, let's see, still people are popping in, great. So the challenge, and we talked about this at the New York AOL conference, where the ACSB shared with me basically comments from peer review teams since the new standards were launched 2020. And one of the recurring comments from the teams is that the competencies look the same. So basically the competencies focus on walk talk basis, basic academic competencies, not so much on anything relating to what comes after. Very little when it comes to inner development goals, very little to USP, unique selling points, meaning why should they choose your school and not another school? If you get exactly the same competencies, well, what's your offer? And how would you competencies basically articulate your mission? So that was something that they wanted us to talk about. But I mean, honestly, meeting 100 American schools, when it comes to competencies, it all looked the same. That's basically true. so I think competencies are very standardized, but the question is, will that be enough? So I think it's great that you have the competencies. You have 30 or something competencies, right?
Why? Oh, no. Why 30?
No.
What are you talking about?
No. I mean the competencies that you need to show a list of competencies, right, or a selection of competencies.
Yeah, not exactly. It's more of per program and per curriculum. You have to divide it in kind of blocks of large competencies in which you have competencies. Okay, and then that is the thing that you might want to match with your AOL.
Yeah.
As much as possible, because depending on the type of program that you have, if these are very professional programs, which in France is might be registered in the RNCP, it's something very specific, then it might be difficult to match it with AOL because the French thing asks you to be very specific. It has to be competencies related to one specific trade or job, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's as long as you can do it. And let's say that we have this thing called Programme Grande École, which is like a master's degree, like a kind of, you know, from the Grande École. These are not as specific because you don't target one specific job with a Programme Grande École. So you have more overarching competencies, and these can match AOL. So I encourage schools, AACSB accredited or going for AACSB, to try and find that that common ground between AOL competency goals and your bloc de compétences for accreditation, national accreditation purposes. So this is very specific to French programs. I see there are non-French here, but mostly are French. So this is one way to lighten the load of accreditation regarding ACSB especially.
Yeah, no, I mean it is helpful, but it doesn't give you, it doesn't show your flair, right? So
No, exactly.
And I think that's the, you know, we all, you know, we need something to accredit, right? So we need to protect our patents, our degree rights, and the institutions, you know, in Europe who assess us based on this, they are not interested in our excellence. They're interested in our compliance. Meaning that, you know, well, let's take my part of the world, where basically you're paid based on how many students you admit and how many who graduate. That's the main quality indicator. So basically, we're a factory, right? They are not interested in whether students get a good job. They are not interested in our purpose, in our offer, or if the students are tooled up or skilled in the way we want. I know that my neighboring country, Finland, looked slightly more at better quality indicators, but still, the main purpose is produce students. So so when it comes to the competencies, then there's nothing from anyone expecting us to give students certain competencies. So it's our job then to take the starting point, our degree rights, and then try to mold this into what we want, because that's what the accreditors expect, both ACSB and EQUIS, what you do with this then.
Yeah.
So it's clay that we need to mold into something.
Yeah. So I think one of the issues, to managing multiple accreditation is that you have to find common ground between your various accreditations, and sometimes it's not easy because the accreditations don't want to look at the same things. So one thing I think can be mutualized is all things related to faculty. Because even though the criteria is not exactly the same from one accreditation to the other, while you're pulling data regarding your faculty, you might want to make sure that you're also pulling the data for your next accreditation. You know, because I'm actually currently experiencing this, working with a school who has just done ACSB. And now we're working on the French accreditation, and they haven't taken advantage of all the data gathering from ACSB to actually feed the national accreditation. So now it's back to, you know, asking people in various services like, I need this and that, and it's a waste of time, really. So do you have tips on how do you do, you know, to try and not over ask your, you know, various teams to gather data for you?
Well, I mean, as you know, if you ask them too many times, they won't ask you. They will answer anyway. That definitely goes for our faculty. So you have to be And I think sometimes they over survey our faculty and admin, and we go for data, look for data which we can't really show that we make use of. So only ask what we will actively need. Not good to have, but you will actually use it for a certain purpose. So, but I mean, it's a good example with the faculty, and being a, I mean, I'm a avid reader of accreditation reports, and I see sometimes that schools mix the nomenclature of EQUIS with ACSP, but that's fine. So you would refer to core and adjunct faculty and report to ACSP. That's fine, because your visitors probably also mix them up sometimes. So, but I mean, core faculty is basically participating faculty. I mean, participating faculty for ACSP is basically the people who contribute to your mission to a certain extent, and it's not only what they do beyond teaching responsibilities, right? Well, sorry, it's what they do there. It doesn't matter if they work 30 or 40 or 50%. It's what they do that's important. So if you save you some time, I mean, since you also need to have some kind of definition for core faculty to meet the standard 4 expectations of EQUIS, try to set a definition where you can use the same data gathering tools, or the net that you throw, that you will be able to basically easily qualify your faculty as core, but also as participating. That's a very low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to systemize this also, so you don't have to go and ask admin 2 times about this, but because if you have the names, their type of contract, and also engagement percentage, that should basically be enough.
Yeah, we have a comment from Marine, hello, who says, if I may, I would still advise to avoid mixing the terminology from different accreditations. Some reviewers are not too familiar with other jargon, and that's true. So, and we've seen that a lot between AOL and ILOs, when it was back to learning objectives and intended learning objectives. So each their own, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't mix terminologies when it comes to discussing the quadrant, that is SAP, IPSP. That I wouldn't do. But I mean, to refer to core faculty, core is a pretty generic term for your main faculty, but of course you shouldn't use them interchangeably. But when we're talking about collecting data, that's a different story. But what ends up, so I'm talking back office now, but what
yes,
ends
exactly.
up
It's not what you put in the report.
And the report.
Yeah,
No, it's exactly data gathering.
And if I may also, for some schools, I mean, schools that have, software like Academ or Digital Measures or Accreditator, it might be easier to pull that data because it's fed into a system, so it's easier. But there are still some schools that don't actually have any kind of faculty management software, and they still have to do it by hand. So I think it's very important that you map out everything you need and the criteria for each accreditation you're going for, and so that you don't have to come back to the team every other month saying, okay, now I need a list of the faculty with blah 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 blah, and that, which you could have asked once and for all, at the beginning of whatever you might. It's okay to do it, I'd say, every year, but if you do it like every 3 months, it's too much. And this can be anticipated, really.
Yeah, and I mean, overall, I don't encourage us to live a life in Excel, because the risk of that the table will be wrongly formatted, or that you have to deal with take reactive measures if you haven't looked into. Well, let's take table 3.1 and 3.2. I try to simulate these tables every year in our system, because I want to pick up if we are if somebody is close to, let's say, losing qualification status. And if you have a lot of people working at your business school, it's easily, you know, a handful of people can slip through. Not too many, hopefully, you know, because, you know, take my school where that 96% are scholarly academic, right? So it's a big focus on research, teaching, and also you know, third stream activities. So it's pretty straightforward. But I mean, if you have a lot of faculty to keep track of it, I mean, some schools wait until maybe the third or fourth year into the accreditation to start to look at the tables, and then it may be too late to let's say save some people who've been on the brink of losing qualification, because that information should ideally go to this faculty member's immediate manager. And look what have happened, and there could be many reasons, from personal to professional reasons. This is easier to pick up if you systemize your data somewhere in some kind of solution than if you create it and keep it in Excel. So that's just a word of advice. To manage multiple accreditations, I mean, you've got to have a system of some sort. It can be homemade, it could be a professional one, it's up to you. But I would advise you not to spend too much of your life in Excel. It's up to you, but I think it's increasingly difficult the more accreditations you have to manage this in you know, in Excel.
But I agree that you need to get your tables and have them ready every year, because then you're falling into a pattern, which is good, because then you're used to doing that, and it's not the once every 5-year exercise and rush, because you might have new people coming in. That's also a problem, you know, when you have new people in staff, and no matter the department, and you need to re-explain what's expected. And if there's a change every year, I mean, not a change, if there's a table every year, then chances are the new person will be trained more quickly than if it's every 5 years, for example. And also the interpretation, and it shouldn't be an interpretation of what's expected, but I'm thinking about table 3.1, and I know, you know, how schools can misunderstand what's expected in the table. So you have to make sure that you have the right definition for every column of the table, and then you know, gather the right data, because otherwise also you lose time. You do something that ends up to be wrong, and you haven't collected the data that will allow you to have the right version of the table. So that's a shame. And I think another. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You may have some questions.
No, I was just going to say that, so we were talking about gathering data, and faculty is an easy one to talk about because it's in every single accreditation that we have, except the French RNCP, which is completely different. But we still need to gather all sorts of data. So I think, again, I know I've told it before, but you need to map out whatever you will need from what department at your school, and make sure that you ask once. I'm going to need that type of data for ACSB, that type of data for CEFDG, that type of data for EQUIS, for example. And then, you know, because you as an accreditation manager might have accreditation fatigue, but the staff also does, being asked again and again for data that's different from the last time, and they don't know why. And so you need to be very clear as to what you need and for what, and be very, I was going to say strict, but very clear about the perimeter of the data you need. I need that type of number of hours or number of students at that date, because I think you might also have the same problem here when you ask for the number of students at your school. Depending on who you ask it to, you will never get the same answer twice. So you have to make it a rule to, you know, to ask that number at one given date. I used to do October 1st. And that would be it. I'm not interested in any of the dates of data gathering, October 1st. Then you know what you're comparing.
Yeah, I mean, in order to be comparable, I mean, we have established a system like that. So I'm trying to think economies of scale. So instead of creating something separate, I'm trying to, let's say, impact my immediate surrounding. It maybe is for me because I'm dealing with the 2,000 students, 120 employees. I know if you come from a much bigger school, even more important to work in a systematic way. But I think we can. There are so many systems and solutions, autocratic ones, efficient ones in our world. So I think the best way is to make use of what you have and see how you can piggyback. So, for example, let's take AOL for example. When I introduced AOL to my school, since I was the one who first went to the conferences, that's 2014, the knee-jerk reaction from people in general, but faculty particularly, is, I don't recognize that. I don't want this. I don't like change. And this sounds awful because I don't know what it means, but it must be awful. So I mean, very little forward-leaning. Oh, I'm curious about this. This sounds good. I'm certainly not used to those kind of academics where I come from, where people embrace change. And I would be surprised if your colleagues would do that too. So I think what I learned was it's about how you present it. So now when we have induction regarding AOL for new employees, we talk about not particularly about ACSB AOL, but they understand it when we talk about student learning, because all examiners are interested in to what extent the students learn, their results on the assignments, and how they can work to make their course even better. And that for me ultimately is the simplest way to explain AOL. Then of course it's more complicated than that, but it starts with that you need to be able to document that your programs, that the students internalized all these competencies that you talk about, that you know that they do it, and what you do with the results, and how you can continue to improve your courses and programs. So it's not because HSB loves tables, it's what you do with it. And that's why it's so important, but that when you fill up your continuous improvement report or your initial self-assessment with the data, it's the starting point for the narrative. That's what it's important, not because HSB loves data or you love data, but it's the story it tells and what kind of action it prompts, be it on operational level, program level, or strategic level. And a good example of that is what may become the new AOL confusion, and that's standard 9, table 9.1. It is not compulsory, and that's the reason why nobody dares not to fill it in, of course. So everybody's doing it, but from the examples I've seen, it's littered with examples. So since the example from the HSB interpreted guidance is UN SDGs, that's what schools do. They try to find UN SDGs that they think that their thought leadership or research with impact relates to, and then they populate with examples. But very often forget about, well, these are examples, but how do we know that these are the results of strategic intent, that this was something you wanted to do? And that's, of course, something you need to explain in standard 1, right? On a more aggregated level in the continuous improvement report, in an ISA on a more detailed level, of course, because that's a gap analysis. But so again, some schools think that, well, if I litter table 9.1 or the text with examples, that's good. No, what it shows is that you lack strategic intent. So you try to compensate with tons of examples. So that's why it's also important to continuously gather data. And this might not be something that you can easily find by going asking IT or HR. You will have to go to your faculty. So So how do you gather data beyond research on thought leadership? How do you gather data regarding everything faculty does, but not always report on? And do you have any repository? Where do you collect it? And when you have all this, is it based on something that your school wanted to achieve, or would it happen anyway? So I think that's the next, that's where we start to see Standard 2020 to tease out, and where it's important that we get feedback from the visiting team to see how the schools deal with this.
But I think it circles back to what I was saying earlier about you need to explain the expectations to your team, because if you don't, then you spend a lot of time trying to demonstrate something. And you're talking about Standard 9, for example. So you're trying to get information that hasn't been quite understood by your school or by the people who might be in the visit also. So it's very important from the start to be very clear about the expectation of the accreditation that you're working on. And if you're working on several accreditations at the same time, which we all are, then it needs to be very clear for everyone what's expected for what. Because otherwise you will waste time re-explaining again and again to various people what the expectation is. And again, this is something that I'm currently experiencing with one of my clients. Like they haven't been explained the big picture of the accreditation. And for example, I'm mentioning this about a French accreditation, the CEFDG, and we have a data sheet with 30 tables to fill out. And I've already explained the tables 3 times to the same person. So it's saves some time by getting all the actors of your accreditation, I would say, familiar with what it's about. Because if everyone discovers, what you're talking about every single time, it's just you're wasting time. And I mean, the purpose of our discussion here is to see how we can better we can have processes or experiences that can actually help lighten the load. Really, that's what it's about. So how do you do that at your school, Björn? Because you have EQUIS, you have ACSB, and you're talking about AMBA, and plus your regular things.
Yeah, I'm not supposed to, but they invited us, so it will be next year. And we've got Financial Times at the moment, the MIM ranking, for example. So there are occasions when we also survey our alumni, right? So they also need to be careful not to serve them too much. I think the key is to see how also to motivate leadership upwards and your colleagues. I think you need to explain how, what they ask them about can be used for different purposes. I think if you describe yourself as somebody who works in a coal mine feeding a big monster, and we don't know why, we're just trying to keep them happy, I think that don't work long term. They might feel your pain, but I think if they understand the context why you ask this, and they can see that it's being used for different purposes, though this may take some time. When we launched our revamped quality assurance system, where basically, and you guys might be doing this all the time, but for us it was new that we write an annual program report and an annual quality improvement plan. We have done it in different ways before. And first, it was a lot of moaning from the heads of programs, because they are the ones, of course, who need to be the main authors. But since I could feed them with a lot of good data from our ASSB process, so table 3.1 on a program level is very good data for a program manager. Also other kinds of data, including the assurance of learning. I could show, this is your program, this is your program goals. Here are the courses where we have decided or plotted where we should particularly look at student learning and the connection between course and program. These are the outcomes. This is what your examiners tells you that they are working with to improve the courses. So ergo, you get a pretty good overview of student learning for your program. And if you couple the AOL with the 3-1 data, then of course they get a very rich picture. So even one of the most grumpy heads of programs told me, we've been doing this for a couple of years, and I hate to say it, but it's actually pretty okay. So that's and I was so happy for just little kudos.
Like you, victory.
Yeah, finally you can see the relevance. So it may take some time.
But I like.
Yeah.
Sorry, I like what you're saying, because it's more of a quality assurance process more than accreditation purpose. And I think that what lacks in a lot of schools, especially French schools, because we're very compliance based, and not very quality based and quality improvement. And if you manage, and maybe that's the key, but then I can see everyone going, but we don't have the time to set this in motion. But head of accreditations really should be head of quality and accreditations. And usually that's what's missing, because we're so focused on accreditations and getting those reports out. And I still say we, because even as a consultant, it's what I deal with, but rarely do we see the quality aspect of the job, even though some of the people here have that quality word in their title. But usually they're just stuck with dealing with accreditation. So it might be interesting, even if it's in the longer run, to work on an overall quality assurance process that includes most of the people. And I know it's like this Everest. When you're swamped with work, you just don't want to deal with all this, and just think about the next report that you're going to have to provide. But I think it's really essential. So how did you manage to get that program improvement? How did you call it? Program improvement report? Quality first and accreditations as the results. Yes, exactly, Christine. Oui.
Yeah, no, I mean, to start with, I invented my own job title. since I when I went over to what some faculty would call the dark forces, that is working admin solely, I said, okay, if I'm going to leave my research center, since I'm a member of faculty, I think this is above all quality assurance. It's quality management. And then, as you just said, accreditation second, ranking second. It needs to start with the quality assurance. So when the university showed me the blueprints of the quality assurance system, I was immediately looking to see how can I impact, so that whatever system they come up with will make my life easier. Working with accreditation, it wasn't too difficult, because let's say in the national systems in Sweden, Finland, Denmark, I would imagine Iceland, the degree objectives are set in law and are very general and are only different for each level, bachelor, master's, PhD, but then they are the same for a bachelor. And then it's up to the university and the business school to rephrase this. So they still needs to align with the legislation, but they can be your own, right? So and what we need to show is how we secure that the students internalize these general degree goals. So you see already there's a skeleton of AOL there. It's just that it's not exactly what ACSB asked for, and I think ACSB is doing much better. So what I was doing was that I tried to tweak and improve a process that we needed to set. So the policy can be the same. I like the fact that I would get AOL data annually for each program. I would never been able to tell faculty, for accreditation reasons, you need to give me this each and every year. But if the university says it, what can they do? So what I try to do is to piggyback AOL on that. So meaning that we get a continuous improvement process on a program level and a quality improvement plan also on an institutional level, that I can show actually trickles, if we can think as can trickle upwards or go upwards. And so you really have to think big. I know if you already have systems in place, difficult to change, but you can still look at how can I weave in what I need for this particular purposes. You can also, because in our world, often there are big decisions made by people who not always have a management experience. It's our colleagues who need to suddenly be a manager of a business school or a program, and they do this on a part-time basis for a number of years, and then there's someone else coming in. So many new kids on the block, you are the constant often, you are the professional. So they have to make big decisions, but don't always have the information or updated. You can give them that. So I mentioned table 3.1 as a good base, together with a 5.1 table for a program director. Imagine what you can do with the 8.1 for your associate dean of research, or for your dean, when he or she needs to chat with, let's say, if you work in a big parent organization, internal research funding. Well, it's usually a combination of mass and quality. You can use both. If you want to talk about how you can work with certain departments in terms of scholar academic, well, it's not only a worry if it's SPE or Equus or anyone else if faculty are lagging behind or keeping themselves updated professionally or academically. It's usually a worry for the immediate manager. Because if you get funding to do research and nothing happens, as an immediate manager, you need to have enough information to understand why is it not happening. So you have the data to show exactly what is happening and where it's happening. And you can even talk about the department culture for research, because you got activity ratios per discipline. And if you would combine that with, for example, the Scopus got some very nice graphs on research heat maps, where you can show, well, even if you would give this individual 50% research time, if we look at the research heat map, there's nothing happening. You know, he or she doesn't have the research network. So how can you create research out of scratch? So then other measures are needed. So by making yourself helpful and sharing good data, you helping them to make informed decisions, you make yourself useful. And then they will see quality is everywhere.
And what you talked about, the program improvement thingy reminds me of something that Sarah Vaughan had told me that she was doing at ECN, and it was like a program sheet. And I think basically it's the same idea, is to show like the major data of your program, number of students, number of hours, AOL results, blah blah blah, and do that every single year and share it. And I think that sharing and communication is really key in those matters. And it makes me think also, earlier you were talking about alumni, and I think same thing. When you work on an accreditation, there's always something about alumni at some point. Whereas where if you need to find like your top alumni or the number of alumni, etc. Same thing. It's not, if you go for that information each time, you are wasting time, because if your school doesn't collect this data on a regular basis, then it's going to be a problem. And to be able to collect the data, as far as alumni is concerned, you need to tell your students, your current students. In France, it's difficult to get data from alumni because they don't have that alumni mindset like Anglo-Saxon school would. I don't know how it is in Sweden, but here it's really hard to maintain a relationship with your alumni, mostly because the schools actually don't put in the effort. They might organize a get-together or a 10-year anniversary for one given cohort, or I don't know. But it's the philosophy is usually lacking. And if you don't develop that alumni mindset while your students are in school with you, then you will struggle to get their responses to the survey. And I see my colleague already nodding like, yeah. We know how difficult it is, especially in the RNCP when we're trying to we need to have at least 80% of respondents to alumni surveys. And sometimes it's just hell on earth because they couldn't care less. Once they graduate, bye, So it's really important to develop that relationship with your future alumni while they're still with you in school. And same thing, you also have solutions for that. If you don't have the resources internally to do that, there are some companies that help you with that. In France, we have Datalumni, which does this very well, and it goes beyond having a directory of your alumni. It's creating events, it's communicating on events. You need to cherish your alumni because you need them, especially during visits. It's not just about numbers. You need them to be there and talk properly about your school,
Yeah, and I mean, if I just take the ranking that we are collecting data for now is the FT the management ranking, right? We use LinkedIn because usually your alumni wants to showcase what they do there. And LinkedIn, it's got some free and also some slightly more expensive solutions where they're already there, like sheep, just need to gather them. So we hadn't really looked into this. So we found out there were at least 5 different places linked in where our alumni were basically nesting. So they created their own little groups because they wanted to stick together. So our work now is to bring them all together and convince them to come to one place.
Yes.
And then you can really start to work on survey data. If you try to make them sign up when they graduate and you reach out to them, it's so much more easier to survey them later when you know where to find them, because then you survey them in LinkedIn. And yes, you can pay 40,000 for the most expensive solution. LinkedIn will probably tell you that you have to do that, but we use a freebie version and it works. So we get a very good response rate. And now students are, from masters, I think it depends on year, between 70 to 100% are global. So they are spread out all over the world. Even more important to make sure that they maintain their affiliation with your school. And it's not too difficult. You just have to reach out to them before they leave and try to, build a culture around this. And then you will have a cohort-based network in LinkedIn, for example, that you can reach out to whenever you want and whenever you need. They're usually quick to respond to rankings because that's good for them, right? Yeah, I know that many schools are struggling. Even there's a reason why FT accept 20% response rate. It's which
yes,
wouldn't.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's they usually say that this need 30%, otherwise useless. But and still schools struggle. Get 20% of their alumni to answer some questions from Financial Times. Then it tells you that you really need to work with culture.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, there are some neat solutions out there. And you would be surprised how many of your former students that build little clubs globally, if you go out and look in LinkedIn.
That's true. It could be interesting to hear from our audience here today. If you have any best practice to share with us about how do you manage multiple accreditations at the same time? How do you do it? How do you organize yourself? And I know that sometimes it gets too hard. That's why I have so much work because sometimes, but you can't do it all. So you need external help to help you with those accreditation processes. Anyone wants to speak up? Don't fight. It's okay. No, okay. Or maybe you want to share. Oh, Adam is here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hello. I won't take too much time. I just, something that works well for me, generally because I like people and I like interacting with people, based on what Bjorn, you and Mélanie spoke about those topics. I always have a list of key stakeholders at the university who might be interested in knowing that I know something about those topics. But also I have sort of my wish list for those people should I happen to run into them, ready so that I can pitch something and make the interaction fruitful, at least for me. And I keep it short, of course. Another thing, just to avoid the mountain of work and potential optimization that we realize in our roles, I think about all the different topics as sort of like a bar chart, and all the little bars are different topics or challenges. And I just, in those moments during the day that I have 5 minutes, I dream of ideas on how each of those little bars could go up and be optimized a little bit more. And my trajectory is typically 3 to 5 years, so I don't hope it's going to change tomorrow, but just simply visualizing that in my head generally helps.
Marine is making a good point. I had forgotten about the videos. She said, didn't you have funky videos to share internally to explain accreditations? Those were great.
I think
Yeah.
those are offline. I think those are offline.
Oh, you should share them because honestly,
Oh,
it was great.
Yeah.
And also to have your internally, it's a great message. So if you're willing to find quickly the link and share them, it would be great.
I'll try.
So you have your elevator pitch ready for when you meet someone interesting for your accreditation, right? That's what I hear.
Looks
Anyone?
like it's lacking an elevator, though.
That's true. Okay,
You
so the
have to get
stair
up the
pitch. Stair pitch takes longer.
Stairway to heaven, right?
Yeah. So if you don't have best practices to share other than Adam, thank you. Maybe you have issues you struggle with particularly. What is the main point of difficulty you encounter while managing multiple accreditations? People are disappearing. Oh, no, that was Adam. So anyone has what's Christine, vas-y.
Yes, it's not specifically issue that I have, but maybe I can share what we are trying to do at the moment regarding data gathering. We are trying to establish for each perimeter for which we need data a kind of framework, référentiel, data framework.
Yes.
And we work with the contributors to explain them what are the data we need, determine if they have them or not, where, and at which frequency we will ask them to provide the data, and for which observation date.
Yep.
So we're trying to structure this. And we have identified 22 different perimeters, and we're having at the moment encounters with all the contributors to establish those frameworks. And we see if it works. I'm not sure for the moment, but for the moment, it's beginning to provide some results. Especially regarding research. We have been able to gather information about the research contributions on a regular basis for 3 years now. So it's easing the process of gathering the information. So we have this for the data about regarding research, the data regarding apprenticeship students. It's a very important point for us. And we are establishing the same system for the faculty. So for the moment, it has proved to be quite useful. And as Björn said previously, we are trying to use the information we gather to provide our other departments with KPIs and analysis of those data to give them elements to take decisions, to implement improvement measures on all kind of subject, not only AOL, but also on other issues. So we are starting to work on that way.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And it's very important, I think, in any case, when you ask something from someone,
to give back.
Yeah, you give back, because, and it goes the same with alumni. If you ask them for information, then you might want to share the results of the survey and give them stats about, you know, how many are employed for how long, and they like to see that. And I remember when I was in the business school, we tried Peregrine. I don't know if some of you are clients of Peregrine, but we used it for AOL. And so you have students take a test. It's not graded. It just shows the results as a cohort. It's not an individual test. And when I shared the results back to the students, they were actually so happy, and they thanked me, and they were very pleased also because they saw that in one of the I think it was ethics and maybe marketing or something, they were above like the rest of the world of the school. So it's very gratifying to see results, or to see if you're in the norm, and you know how we always need to compare ourselves with others. So it's very important, I think, to share the results back, and not just we got the accreditation. And even sometimes schools don't even do that. They don't even take the time to celebrate their accreditation, which I think is a shame, because so much effort is put into that.
But honestly, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy.
Yes, that's true.
To implement the system.
I know. And it's, yes, because it's not something that people are used to. They're usually used to working in their field, you know, and then you ask them to open their eyes and see what's out there and how the rest of the school works and how it interacts. So but I still think it's important, and it's a good thing that you're starting on this. So we're coming to an end. I would say the main takeaways from our conversation would be that you should communicate with all the stakeholders of accreditations. You need to work on your quality processes as a general rule, and as Christine said in the conversation, accreditation should be the result of the quality, and not just not like the leading subject. And what else? Share whatever results you have, and pace yourself. Don't burn out. And also, no, I think it's important to say that if you feel that you're drowning, just ask for help. You always have colleagues, even though they're also very busy with work, will just be human enough to help you out and not drown, because it can get very overwhelming very fast. So really, it's important. Take care of yourselves because there's so much work in accreditations. And I don't know if I have it. No, because Marine, you had written an article about accreditation fatigue, and I wanted to share the link if that's okay with you. And if that's not okay with you, I'm still sharing it because I don't have your answer yet. So she said, sure. Okay, there it is. Yes, exactly. Adam is saying that, you know, never hesitate to reach out. I do it all the time. Love to talk about challenges we're all facing. That's also, I think, is great. In France, we have that group, which I've been banned off because I no longer work at a school. But Yeah, I feel so sad and left out, but you know. So there's this group about of accreditation people. They gather every Wednesday morning and just share stories and discuss new laws, new requirements. How do you understand that? How, you know, and I think that discussion groups, even between schools, even between competitors, is very interesting. And the WhatsApp group, yes, we do have a WhatsApp group too. And that part, I mean, I'm part of that one. So
and there's also affinity groups and many different groups through ACSB Exchange, you know.
That's true, yes. Problem is with the exchange is that there are too many Americans. And no, it's not too many. I mean, statistically, there are more Americans than the rest of the world, but I don't.
We can do something about that. We can engage.
Yes, honestly, but you could, and I'm talking to French people here. You should share on the exchange as well, because apart from me and sometimes Isabelle, I don't see many French schools actually interacting or, you know, answering posts or posting questions. And it's such a great place to talk about things and get feedback. People are willing to share their experience. So, you know, be comfortable asking and be comfortable sharing, answering posts. I think it's important. I know that I overworked right now and I don't really have the time to go much more, but I try to do it as often as I can, though. So thank you all for your presence today. Next month should be a webinar with Keith Pond from EOX, where we will talk about online accreditations. I still not sure because I haven't checked again, but that should be the one. And at some point, I will get Adam also as a guest. Oh, Isabelle is here. Cuckoo. And see some of you next week in Atlanta. So you take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.